thank you very much to Jacob for convening this forum on my favorite topic in the world, which is artificial intelligence. It's a little known fact that I never wanted to be in Congress. I actually wanted to be a researcher in AI. When I was in 7th grade, my father brought home an Apple II computer from work, and he gave me a book on how to teach yourself to program in BASIC. It was pretty minimal then. We didn't have the money for a disk drive, so I had to type in every program every time the computer was turned on. Got me very good at debugging. I went to Caltech and got a degree in computer engineering, and my ambition in life was to be an academic and do cutting-edge research in AI, because I was as convinced then as I am now that AI is going to completely change our world, the way we interact with each other, and the way that commerce is done. Along the way, something happened that completely deflected me, which is that I answered a want ad on our bulletin board in our computer science department looking for an expert programmer for a certain microprocessor. And I called the number, just wanted money to buy a car, believe it or not. And it turned out to be a company working with this little-known firm in Japan that had an outlandish name. Maybe you've heard of them. They called themselves Nintendo. And they were about to introduce their first game machine in North America, and they were looking for English-speaking programmers to help them write video game software. So that became my side hustle. I went to UCLA working on my PhD in AI, doing some of the early research on natural language processing and computer vision. We were trying to teach computers to conduct a symbolic understanding of a narrative and be able to really understand symbolically what people were trying to say when they spoke to a computer. And it turns out that's a really hard problem 30 years ago, and it's still a really hard problem now. So that was going to be my ambition right up until one of the games that I'd written for the Sega Genesis went platinum, as we say in the industry. And that kind of deflected me out of my PhD in AI and into a career in business. So I ran a video game development studio for 30 years and then found myself in Congress. So it is an honor to be leading the House AI Task Force. I think that computer scientists are underrepresented in Congress. In fact, at my last count, we had more professional athletes in Congress than we do have computer scientists. I blame all of you for that. Send me reinforcements here. The House AI Task Force is brand new. We were constituted earlier this year with the express task of creating by the end of the year a federal regulatory framework for artificial intelligence. So easy, right? By the end of the year, we're going to deliver a report that details our approach to regulating AI. And this is a critically important task, because I don't need to tell you, the people in this room, how important AI is, not just to our economic competitiveness, but to our national security in this country. We have kind of two ideas that are in tension. One is that we want to make sure we guard against the potential malicious use of AI and the harmful consequences of AI. But at the same time, we want to make sure we enable the beneficial uses of AI, because AI is such a powerful tool for enhancing worker productivity. So I think it's important that we have this North Star firmly in mind when we establish a framework. And I think you have to have a reason for regulation. If you just regulate for the sake of regulating, I think you're on a fool's errand. If you want an example, I think, of what not to do, you can look to the European Union. The EU last year passed, finally, a 3,000-page bill they called the AI Act, a bill that they had to rewrite twice along the way as the face of AI changed, as large language models became evident, and as the power of generative AI became apparent. But they finally got it passed. They're creating an almost universal licensing requirement for anything but low-risk use contexts for AI. And they're spinning up a brand new bureaucracy to regulate it. And to me, that is regulating for the purpose of regulation. If instead we view the task of regulating through the lens of reducing consumer harms, I think it becomes a lot clearer the path that we need to go down. We are kind of at a junction right now where we have to decide whether or not to spin up a new agency to regulate AI, or whether or not we empower our existing sectoral regulators to regulate the use of AI within their sectoral spaces. I think it's very important that we talk about this, because it's a momentous decision, one that's going to influence the way that AI is regulated in this country. And our sectoral regulators are already having to deal with this problem. I was astonished a few months ago when we had a meeting of the health subcommittee on which I sit, and the FDA testified that it has already issued over 500 permits for the use of AI in medical devices. Think about that. 500 permits. 200 of those devices are already on the shelves. It's hard to imagine a higher risk context for AI than in a medical device. And yet, our sectoral regulators are already having to navigate this space. And perhaps that's appropriate. NIST issued a risk management framework last year that I thought was really excellent work. And in that framework, they made the point that the risks of AI are highly contextual. Something that is unacceptably risky in one use context could be completely benign in another context. And I think the idea of sectoral regulation captures that. So you have to ask whether it would be simpler to teach the FDA what it might not already know about the use of AI in the medical space, or would it be easier to teach a brand new agency everything the FDA has learned about ensuring patient safety over the last 50 years? I think it's pretty clear that it's the former and not the latter. But that's not to understate the difficulty of the task ahead of us. We definitely need to spin up federal agencies to create testing and evaluation standards for AI. We need regulatory sandboxes for the testing of potentially malicious AI. We need pools of technical talent that are available to other federal agencies. We need international cooperation in the setting of standards and the monitoring of the training of potentially malicious AI. All of these things have to happen. But I think it's important to keep that North Star in mind. We want to make sure we mitigate potential harms while still allowing the industry to flourish. And this is particularly important to remember in the context of our international stance on the world stage. It's probably no surprise to anyone in this room that in 2017, China made a commitment to becoming the world's superpower in AI by the year 2030. And they are well along in that mission. They have devoted vast amounts of resources to achieving that goal. Many of the world's top AI companies are in China. Several years ago, China passed the United States in the number of PhDs it was graduating in computer science. This year, it is likely they will graduate double the number of PhDs in computer science that we do in the United States. Last year, we graduated about 830,000 four-year students with STEM degrees. Last year, China graduated 3.2 million students with four-year STEM degrees. We are never going to maintain our stance on the world stage if we can't solve this problem. And one reason I'm bringing it up today is that I would love to enlist everyone in this room's help in doing that. This audience has the reach to achieve a more universal catalyzation of our student body into those STEM fields, and we're going to desperately need those students if we're going to remain competitive on the world stage. China also has some structural advantages over the U.S. Obviously, they have a very centralized economy that makes it much easier for them to devote resources in a way that can advance a goal like the one that they've set for themselves. They are also making the use of AI in their own governance. They're creating what is going to be the most advanced surveillance state in the world if it already is not. However, we have some advantages of our own. We're much better at entrepreneurialism than they are. That's something that's always been true of America. We have another advantage, which is that because of the nature of the Chinese government's control over their economy, they have also enacted some of the strictest controls in the world over the commercial use of AI. So it's definitely an advantage that the United States is going to have in competing with our geopolitical rivals. But that does not underscore the problem that we have with our national security and the use of AI. I think it's pretty clear if you look at the doomsday scenarios for the use of AI. Kind of the worst doomsday scenario one can imagine is a nation state attempting to use AI offensively. That's probably a lot more poignant to the people in this room than the conventional doomsday scenario, which is something out of the Terminator, where a wave of evil robots rises to take over the world with their red laser eyes. A much more plausible scenario is a geopolitical rival using their mastery of AI offensively to further their own geopolitical gains. But the good news is the best defense against the malicious use of AI is the defensive use of AI. And that's why it's so important that we maintain the United States' competitive leadership in this field. There was an open letter last year that I think probably most people saw, written by some pretty deep thinkers and deliberative folks calling for a worldwide halt in the development of advanced AI. And although I sense that that letter was well-intended, I think it was very unrealistic. Because if we stopped in the development of AI, and let's pretend that we in Congress had the power to completely halt it anywhere within the borders of the United States, which I think is optimistic in itself, but even if we could, we're not going to halt development of AI by our geopolitical rivals, such as China and others. And if we're acknowledging that the best defense against the malicious use of AI is the use of AI itself, it's critical that we continue. So I think that underscores the need to get our job of regulating right, of striking that balance between stimulating the productive use of AI and protecting against the malicious use of AI. And I'd like to end on a note of optimism, because I think that if you look at the entire history of our country, you'll find that every single expansion of our gross domestic product was heralded by a corresponding increase in American worker productivity. Every single one. You really can't have one without the other. The productivity of our workers is what drives our economy. And yet, in the last 6 years, our worker productivity has been in decline. I think AI has the potential to reverse that trend. And it will be disruptive. No one pretends that it won't. Every major technological innovation is, going back to the invention of the printing press, but most recently, the advent of the internet. But that shouldn't take away from the fact that AI has the potential to create not only an expansion of our economy, but a rising wave of prosperity that literally lifts all the boats. So that's kind of our North Star when we're looking at what could happen with AI. But it makes it very clear how important it is for us to get our job right. So I want to thank you very much for being here. Please go back to your companies and your communities and send us some reinforcements here. We need more kids with 4-year degrees. We need more kids with PhDs in computer science. We need more computer scientists in Congress, and we need more attention paid to this critically important issue. So thank you very much, and look forward to having the discussion with you.